we have a very interesting topic, that is principle of joint liability or the constructive liability as defined in section 34 of the Indian Penal Code. As per the marginal note of section 34, acts done by several persons in furtherance of common intention. See very minutely the term several person and in furtherance of common intention. These two terms are very important while studying section 34 of the Indian Penal Code. Let us take an example. Suppose 5-6 person decided to rob a bank. सभी लोगों ने अपना अपना पार्ट डिसाइड कर लिया. देयर इज प्रायर मीटिंग ऑफ माइंड. उन सभी लोगों ने आपस में डिस्कस किया कि भाई ए जो है गेट पे खड़ा रहेगा, वहां पे वो देखेगा कि कहीं पुलिस तो नहीं आ रही, सो दैट ही मे इन्फॉर्म द पर्सन्स हु आर इनसाइड ऑफ द बैंक एंड अदर पर्सन्स दे विल एंटर इनटू द बैंक. एक आदमी जा करके कैशियर से कैश लेगा. उसके अलावा तीसरा जो इंसान होगा वो खड़ा होकर के सबको डराएगा, धमकाएगा ताकि कोई पुलिस को इन्फॉर्म ना करे. उसके अलावा 2 लोग और पूरे बैंक में चक्कर लगाते रहेंगे, सो दैट environment of fear may be created among the person who are inside the bank. अब वो बंदा, वो इंसान जो गेट पर खड़ा है, क्या वो कह सकता है कि he is not the part of the crime committed on the part of the person who are committing the crime inside the bank? No. सब के सब लाइबल होंगे. वो ये नहीं कह सकता कि भले ही अंडर मर्डर हुआ हो, अंदर जा करके कैशियर से कैश लेते वक्त जो है एक इंसान ने उस पर गोली चला दी, तो वो इंसान जो बैंक के बाहर खड़ा है वो ये नहीं कह सकता है कि मैं इस क्राइम का भागीदार नहीं हूं, मेरा केवल इतना ही काम था कि मैं गेट पे खड़ा होकर देखूंगा कोई आ रहा है या नहीं. नो, ही कैन नॉट से सो बाय वर्च्यू ऑफ सेक्शन 34 ऑफ द इंडियन पीनल कोड 1860 बिकॉज it shall be deemed that he has committed the crime in the same manner as if it were done by him alone. So by the principle of joint liability, by the principle of constructive liability, by the principle of vicarious liability, he shall be convicted for the offense committed inside the bank, for the offense committed the robbery. So let us start with section 34. It says acts done by several persons in furtherance of common intention. Let us take another example. Suppose करिए कि 5-6 लोग किसी को मारना स्टार्ट करते हैं and they started beating. One was beating over the head, other one beating over the back, other one beating over the legs. So one person who is beating over the leg cannot say that I was not the part of this crime and therefore I shall only be responsible for the offense committed by me. No, he shall be responsible for the death caused to the individual, because it shall be deemed that he has committed the act and the act were done by him alone. So let us start. When criminal act is done by several persons, so here 5-6 persons are there, they have committed the criminal acts, so therefore there are several persons in furtherance of common intention of all. That line is very important, in furtherance of common intention of all. So everyone decided to do the crime and therefore they committed the crime in furtherance of common intention. They have one common intention to commit an offense, to commit the offense of robbery, to commit the offense of theft, or to commit an offense of murder. So therefore they have a common intention and therefore each of such person is liable for that act in the same manner as if it were done by him alone. So even though the person who was standing outside of the gate shall not say that I shall not be responsible, I shall only be responsible for my act alone. No, it shall be deemed that it was done by him alone. So under IPC, there are some provisions in which it determines liability of the person committing a crime in combination with some others. So, in all such cases, joint liability is created. In these all such cases, the joint liability is created either because the intention is common or the object is common. So if the person is having an intention to commit an offense, so he in consultation with the others committed the crime, or if there is object is common, then in such a situation the joint liability is created and therefore all the person shall be jointly responsible. Under IPC, the criminal's liability is determined according to the manner in which he becomes associated with the commission of the crime. So he becomes associated with the commission of the crime by doing certain acts towards the commission of the crime. So normally a person may participate in following ways. For example, when he himself commits the crime. So, for example, A, who intended to commit an offense, A intended to commit the offense of theft, and therefore he went and he committed the offense of theft. So he himself committed the offense. When he shares commission of it, what does it mean? There is joint liability. He A said to B that we have to go and commit the offense of theft. So there is joint liability. Again, when he sets some other agency to work, for example, he hires someone and asks him to commit the offense. So he engages some other agency to commit an offense on his behalf, or when he helps the offender after the commission. So that is basically the offense of abatement as defined under section 107 read with section 108 of the Indian Penal Code. So the third and fourth part, when he sets some other agency or when he helps the offender after the commission of the crime, it is the part of the abatement as defined under section 107 of the Indian Penal Code. So these are some joint liability under which the person's liability is being fixed. अब हम बात करते हैं ऑब्जेक्ट की कि व्हाट इज द ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ सेक्शन 34 ऑफ द इंडियन पिनल कोड. सेक्शन 34 intended to meet a case in which it is very difficult to distinguish between the criminal act of the individual and the criminal act of all. क्यों? क्योंकि 5-6 लोग मिल करके अगर किसी को मार रहे हैं तो हम वहां पे एग्जैक्टली पता नहीं कर सकते कि किसके ब्लो से उसकी डेथ हुई है. हो सकता है कि सभी की कंजॉइंट ब्लो से उसकी डेथ हुई हो या फिर किसी एक के ब्लो से उसकी डेथ हुई हो. सो एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम वी कैन नॉट डिस्टिंग्विश बिटवीन द क्रिमिनल एक्ट्स of one and criminal acts of others. So therefore, there is principle of joint liability. Or second reason may be, or to prove exactly what part was taken by each of them. हो सकता है कि किसी के एक थप्पड़ के मारने से उसकी डेथ न हुई हो, लेकिन कंजॉइंटली अगर 20 लोग मिल करके अगर उसे मारते हैं, then definitely there would be some grievous injury and ultimately there would be death of the individual. So at that point of time, at that juncture, we cannot exactly bifurcate that what part was actually taken by one individual, and therefore we make it a constructive liability or the joint liability. Now the question is, what is the reason why all deemed to be guilty? Why not only one? Why he should not be punished for his own act, and why he should be punished for acts of other? The reason is presence of accomplices gives encouragement. It gives encouragement to other. For example, I have given you an example of the robbery, the person who is standing outside of the gate. So it gives encouragement to the person who are inside of the bank, and they are under impression that if police will come or someone will come, if he sends some threat, then definitely he will inform us. So it gives an encouragement to the person who are inside the bank and who are committing the crime. It gives support, it gives protection and confidence that the person who is not playing any role is still he is the person who is giving support, encouragement, and the confidence. The point is, what are other names of group liability or the joint liability? It is also called the constructive liability and the vicarious liability, and under section 34, if there are several persons who are committing a crime in furtherance of common intention of all, then each of them shall be liable as if the act were done by him alone. Come to the point, what are the other sections, what are the other provisions under the Indian Penal Code which incorporates the principles of joint liability, or the constructive liability, or the group liability, or the vicarious liability? So the number one is when criminal act is done with the common intention of a group. That starts from section 34 to section 38, that deals with the common intention of a group. If the group is committing an offense with the common intention, then they shall be dealt under section 34 to section 38 of the Indian Code. Point number two, when criminal act is done with the common object of an unlawful assembly. If the common object of an unlawful assembly is to commit an offense, then they shall be dealt under section 149 of the Indian Penal Code. Point number three, criminal conspiracy. That is given under section 120A, read with section 120B of the Indian Penal Code, and also criminal conspiracy is given under section 121A of the Indian Penal Code. Five or more persons committing dacoity, they are dealt under section 396 of the Indian Penal Code. If five or more persons committing the offense of dacoity, then all shall be liable, even though one of them is not committing that dacoity, he is simply standing outside of the area, then still he shall be liable for the offense. House breaking by night, as given under section 460 of the Indian Penal Code, and all the persons who are involving in the crime, who are involved in the crime, they all shall be liable for the offense. So the principle underlying under section 34 of the Indian Penal Code is section 34 creates no specific offense. You must keep in mind, that's very important term, that section 34 creates no specific offense. It only lays down the rule of evidence. So you must keep in mind, I repeat, you must keep in mind that section 34 is not a specific offense, rather it lays down the rules of evidence of joint liability. If more than two persons in common intention of all committing any offense, then all shall be liable as if it were done by him alone. ऐसा माना जाएगा कि सब ने मिल करके वो क्राइम किया है, या उसने इंडिविजुअली पूरा का पूरा क्राइम किया है, एंड ऑल शैल बी लायबल फॉर द सेम ऑफेंस एंड एवरीवन शैल बी punished vicariously. So two or more persons committing an offense in furtherance of common intention of all, then each of them will be liable jointly on the principle of group liability. तो ये माना जाएगा कि सबने मिल करके क्राइम किया है, and definitely all shall be liable. Come to the history of section 34 of the Indian Penal Code. Originally it was not like that, rather it was amended in the year 1870, and the term in furtherance of common intention of all was substituted. The original section was when a criminal act is done by several persons, each of such person is liable for that act in the same manner as if the act was done by him alone. But this particular section created a lot of confusion among the judiciary, and there were different interpretations by the different high courts, and therefore finally the parliament, the Indian parliament, came with new amendments and substituted the phrase in furtherance of common intention of all, and therefore now we have the present form of section 34 of the Indian Penal Code to eradicate the confusion, the ambiguity among the different high courts. Section 34 incorporates the common sense principle of joint liability, laid down in R versus Cruz in the year 1938. इस केस में होता क्या है कि there was a person, he was a police officer, he went to arrest other person, the arrestee along with his assistant. होता क्या है कि जैसे ही उसको अरेस्ट करने जाता है, there were 3-4 person, call them B, C, D. They came out of the house and they started beating to the police officer. So what happened? The English court evolved the doctrine of joint liability and held each of them liable, whether actually they struck to the police officer or not, but all shall be liable, and the court made them all liable for the offense committed at that point of time. And therefore, Section 34 is based on the principle of joint liability evolved in R versus Cruz. ये तो होगी पूरी इंट्रोडक्शन की बात. Now come to the main aspect of Section 34, that is ingredients of Section 34 of the Indian Penal Code. Some criminal act. The first and foremost ingredient of this particular section is some criminal act. There is some criminal act on the part of the accused. Point number 2, criminal act was done by more than one person. What does it mean? If any individual is committing a crime, then he shall not be charged under Section 34. Read with some other sections of the Indian Penal Code. Rather, he shall be charged under some different section. Point number 3, in furtherance of common intention of all of them. So he committed the crime in furtherance of common intention of all of them, that we will discuss later, that what we call the common intention of all. Common intention in the sense of pre-arranged plan between such persons. So here the common intention means the pre-arranged plan between such persons. We will discuss it later. Participation in some manner constituting the offense by the person sought to be prosecuted. So the person, even though he is standing outside of the gate, he is participating in the crime in some manner, and therefore he shall be jointly or constructively liable for the offense committed. Physical presence at the time of the commission of the crime. So the person was physically present at the time of the commission of the crime, but physical presence of all is not necessary. The person may coordinate through phone calls, the person may coordinate through emails, WhatsApp chat. So it is not mandatory that he shall present all the time throughout the commission of the crime at the crime scene. So it is not a mandatory requirement. We will discuss one by one the ingredients in detail in our next lecture or in our next video. Thank you. Thank you very much.